Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick update on my experience with the Sony A7. Now this is one of two brand new alpha cameras that Sony introduced on December 1st. The kit we're looking at here is priced at $1999.99. You can buy this camera body alone at $1699.99 or opt for the higher resolution A7R body alone for $2299.99. With pricing out of the way, let's talk about the A7. You're getting the lightest full-frame mirrorless interchangeable lens camera on the market. Sony really bringing together the best of their digital imaging brand, in my opinion, into this brand new lineup, specifically the two cameras that I've mentioned. And, whether or not this one or the 7R is right for you comes down to your pure need, in my opinion, for the resolution. Both are weather sealed, both have Wi-Fi and NFC, both have 4K HDMI output, as well as headphone jack for monitoring and microphone input. You've also got a micro, or in this case, even though it is a micro USB port, Sony refers to it as a multi-port. That's part of their new branding. You have the same exact viewfinder found on the A99, so a great OLED viewfinder built in, sound monitoring, a 3-inch display that tilts, functions really well, and has, in my opinion, one of the best reproduction values in terms of color accuracy that you're going to find on any camera in the market. They've also moved the memory card access away from the battery door, which has been pretty much a mainstay on all of their mirrorless cameras, into the side of the camera like most traditional digital SLRs. So some interesting design cue changes. The battery's down here. It takes the same W series battery that all of the NEX cameras were built around, as well as some other cyber shots from days past, such as the HX models, the older ones. And really, it does bring together everything that there is to like about Sony DI. So if you're in the market for a full-frame camera and you want the most lightweight package that really is still not a compromise, in my opinion, you're looking at it. And at $2,000, whether or not you want to pick up the kit lens is really a matter of personal preference. The body alone right now does leave you with very few options when it comes to glass, because even though this is based around Sony's E-mount, the same mount that the entire NEX lineup was built around, they do have now FE lenses, which are full-frame E-mount lenses. Very limited selection at launch. I mean, the Zeiss 35 f2.8 is an $800 piece of glass. The 50mm f1.8 is a $1,000 piece of glass. The Zeiss Zoom is $1199.99. That's an f4 constant. You've also got a Sony piece of G glass, another zoom lens, 70-200, that is, again, well over $1,000. So the whole point is that there aren't a tremendous amount of options, and if you're going to use any native E-mount older lenses, like I have a whole collection, those of you that subscribe are well aware of that already from my coverage. But right now, if I pop, the Power Zoom 18-200 on here, it's going to crop down to 10 megapixels. If I shoot it without the cropping mode, without the actual mode that the camera is designed to utilize with that lens, the image is pretty much useless. So you have to use the crop mode, and results have been good. They're not bad, but there's no question when you look at a $1,200 lens like that, you wonder how much is the Power Zoom lens for this camera going to cost? What is that FE version going to cost? After all, Sony was so in love with making 18-200 millimeter E-mount lenses. I covered all of them, as most of you know that are subscribers to my channel, specifically those of you interested particularly in photography. So curious whether or not we'll see that happen with the FE brand. It would be interesting to see if they make 3 different versions. I highly doubt that they will, because I think the whole idea there was learning from mistakes or correct decisions. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of 18-200 we end up getting. But the Power Zoom works really well on here, and that's what's nice. So even though I can throw that E-mount lens on here and it gets cropped down, think about what that represents, though, in terms of turning this into a video camera. That's where things get really interesting. So while the 18-200 old E-mount lens may not be as good as getting an FE lens for video with Power Zoom, it is still a really good option on a body like this where you have a much better grip than you do with a traditional Micro Four Thirds or any other mirrorless camera on the market. I mean, the ergonomics built in here give you that digital SLR feel that the NEX7 introduced us to in the mirrorless segment, and it just takes it to a whole nother level. The built-in viewfinder is literally, it reminds me, even though it's the A99, it's like going back to the A900 design a little bit. Definitely that Konica Minolta influence. And again, you're just achieving a whole new level of photographic capability in a camera that really isn't much larger or is relatively the same size as most high-end mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras or Micro Four Thirds. So Sony breaking all the rules, setting new standards, and at least in my experience, the camera delivers. The autofocus has been relatively fast, 5 frames per second continuous with this camera. All of the buttons work really well. I wish this shutter button was metal. It's plastic, I believe. I'm not sure why. Nitpicking, though, because overall, it's just built really well. Granted, the A7, which is what we're looking at, the 24-megapixel version of this brand new Alpha lineup of full-frame mirrorless interchangeables, has the polycarbonate build as opposed to the 7R, which has the more metallic. Both are still weather-sealed, weatherproofed, so you can get this camera wet. Another feature that Sony cameras have, constantly been missing, or lacking, I should say. And I think a lot of people were wondering when that was going to finally arrive. And that's where, again, I say that the A7 and A7R represent the best of Sony DI, because every single thing you could possibly want has been delivered in this package. Now, the only downside is you might think it's expensive. But when you start to compare what you're getting here in terms of the photographic tool on the still side, and then what it can do in video capture with AVC HD at 1080p, 60p, 28 megabits per second, as well as the 24p mode. You also have MP4 capability, and then all the different capabilities that will potentially arrive with the Sony Play Memory application market that has already been growing on the NEX platform. This camera is just a monster in every single way. So whether we're talking about the sensor, which is just gigantic. I mean, think about this body. I've shown it before. That sensor's huge. It's crazy. I could practically fit my reflection in it. And that's because we're looking at a full frame, 35 millimeter equivalent. And when you get a medium format sensor like this, and Sony at least tells you they're going to roadmap a ton of glass, it's true, folks. They're going to do it. And they proved that with the E-mount. A lot of doubters were out there, and they really did build out a whole lineup of lenses. And for those of you that are E-mount owners like myself, you don't need to go to the A7. I will remind and reiterate throughout all of my coverage of this fantastic camera, because it is a game changer. You do not need to go to the E-mount. Sony's got plenty of APS-C-sized mirrorless cameras for you coming in 2014. There will be a successor to the A7, to the NEX7. Just because this has a 7 in the name does not mean it's the replacement, but rather that it represents the same level of quality as the NEX7, but now in a different category. That's my way of looking at it. This isn't that someone from Sony relayed that to me, but it's just logical when you think about it. So really like this camera. I think I've reiterated that enough, and it's just a performer. It does everything well, and low light performance is amazing. It's my RX1 with interchangeable lenses and slightly less build quality, but with the added bonus of Wi-Fi, NFC, and the best built-in viewfinder that you can pretty much get on any camera in the market. So that's a big plus. And then all of the added thumb dial, finger dial combo, customizable buttons really do take it to the next level. Let me go ahead and power the camera on for those of you that have made it through the 9 minutes. I do want to show you some menus and let you actually see what the camera looks like. Don't have the date and time set, but I'm going to just take you quickly through what you should expect. I'll zoom in here from this camera in terms of the menu system. And the menu system is right there. It's pretty much the same with the RX1. They're going from their true digital SLR experience. This is not the NEX experience anymore, but keep in mind, Even though that brand has been dropped, as I mentioned before, you still will be able to get it if that's what you desire. Don't just upgrade to full frame because Sony seems to be telling you that, because they really aren't. They just haven't introduced the new NEX models yet that will be under the Alpha name. Hopefully that didn't confuse too many. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into the menu. These are, again, the design borrowed straight from the RX1. And you can see right out of the gate, I'll go to the camera options, 7 pages in here, but still really quick access. So whether we want image size, aspect ratio, the quality, do you want RAW plus JPEG or just extra fine? In terms of file format, AVCD, AVCHD or MP4, the actual quality settings, your drive mode, I've already mentioned before, 5 frames is as fast as it's going to get. Self-timer, but since you've got the smart remote with the A7, that's a pretty nifty added bonus. Bracketing, I mean, these are all things that are established already. These aren't new things to see, but they are really welcomed additions, no question about it. Your flash mode, red eye reduction, focus mode. I mean, this is what we've all been waiting for, pretty much, or at least I have. I'll speak for myself in this review. Your focus area, the autofocus illuminator, which I'm going to actually shut off now. Metering mode, white balance, your auto HDR, your actual creative style. This is something that Sony has on all of their cameras. Picture effect, in intelligent mode, we don't have access. Let me switch it over. I should have done that already. Go back to the menu. Picture effect, this is, again, nothing new to what Sony has to offer, but you see a lot of modes integrated. The zoom, no digital zoom here. Take us back to the menu. I usually leave this set to normal or off altogether. The lock on autofocus, which has been somewhat, I mean, it seems to me that the continuous autofocus is more of a lock than a continuous, but I'll get to that in my full review after I've spent more time with the camera. Smile detection, also not a new thing. Soft skin effect. The auto object framing, another cool feature. Some may argue gimmick. Steady shot, critical, obviously, the image stabilization, one of the keys of this camera, and all of Sony's cameras for that matter. Auto slow shutter. The audio recording, I mean, you've got levels, which is great with this camera. Another pro feature coming to a mirrorless camera from Sony. This is really, again, just taking the mirrorless game to new heights, new expectations, a whole nother ballpark. Continuing to take you through this. I'm going to speed it up, though, because I'm going to save most of this for the full review. But really, just a ton of features on this camera. Your wireless features, which work much like previous generations in terms of sharing and all of that, in terms of just hitting send to smartphone, send to computer, view on TV, and you're good to go as long as it's all networked. And hopefully the Play Memories app gets developed this month, the App Store, the way Sony promised, because that is, again, one of the biggest selling points. I mean, name another full-frame camera where you're going to have something like time-lapse built in. I mean, it's just, we're in a new age of photography when you can combine quality with technology the way Sony has here. And that's my best way of summing things up. But everything's here. If you don't want to use the viewfinder, use the Sunny mode for the LCD screen, another best-in-class feature. All these programmable dials allow you to basically have quick access to everything you could ever possibly want. And then finally, something that I know a lot of you have been waiting as I drop the cap to hear is the shutter sound. So let's just do that now. Putting it right up next to the mic. I don't think it's bad. I mean, it's comparable to Sony's other mirrorless interchangeable lens cameras. If you're going to compare it to something like the RX1, then yeah, it's a disappointment. The RX1 has a silent shutter completely. So I think that if you can put it into perspective that you have a full frame camera right here, the shutter isn't as hideous as many of the complaints that I've heard. The A7R is supposed to be a little bit louder, but if you need the extra resolution and don't want that low pass filter, and you also want the more metallic build, and by the way, the build on this is fantastic, even though the A7R boasts a little bit better, still fantastic. So both cameras look to be superstars. It's all a matter of, the maturation of the glass. Keep in mind, you can throw an adapter on there and put any legacy glass on there that you want, use peaking, manual focus, and that's what really made the NEX great, and now this full frame version even better. So everything you could possibly want under one roof, in my opinion, when it comes to still and video capability. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.